Um, I want to first thank you for this opportunity to talk about transportation issues. Listen to part of the presentation there. And as I was looking at my comments and looking at your discussion points there, some of those line up for me. Um, as your association is well aware, the state highway system hasn't received the level of investment it needs, and I think your discussion, is timely, and that how do we come up with those monies to invest in the needs that our highway system is in dire need of. The result is a huge backlog of maintenance and preservation work on our highways, bridges, and ferries. In your survey, you discovered that. Um, Department of Transportation has estimated it will require an additional $1 billion per year for the next 19 years to bring the system up to a state of good repair. For the situation to get that bad is an indication that there hasn't been necessary leadership on transportation. What is especially frustrating, I think, to citizens have been that I've been talking to around the state is that um, we are paying one of the highest gas taxes in the country, plus license fees, weight fees, and carbon emission fees. Despite that, people see the deteriorated condition of our highways and ferry system, but there doesn't seem to be a coherent plan to solve the problem. This tells us that the governor and legislature really haven't done a good job of setting priorities, in my opinion, or facing up to future needs. As the governor, here's a few things that I would do. Immediately take the following actions to address the highway maintenance backlog. First, instruct DOT to prepare a prioritized list of all the needed work. Secondly, have DOT and OFM jointly develop a long-term financial plan for maintaining state highways at the lowest life cycle cost, which is what the RCW requires. I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know. Number three, work with the chairs of the legislators' joint transportation committee to prepare a multi-year plan that tackles the highest priorities first and then gets started on the backlog. This should not be a partisan issue. Everybody needs the highways. They serve every county in the state. They are essential for the state's economy. I know that you all realize that. We all realize there needs to be a fix, and there is no quick fix. It has taken a decade of neglect to get to this point, and it'll probably take at least that long to fix it. Adequate funding for the highway preservation and maintenance is my top transportation priority for 2025 legislative session. The ferry system, I've been hearing a lot about it from people around Puget Sound. It's not just commuters and people who are fed up waiting in line for hours, but also the mayors and local businesses who rely on the ferry system. Back in 2019, the ferry system adopted a long-range plan that called for adding 7 new ferries by 2028. And what I've been told recently is that they'll be lucky to add just 2 new boats by 2028, and service may not be fully restored for several years and or beyond that. And I know that you think that's unacceptable. I agree with you and the people that are using those ferries the most. To make matters worse, the governor's vaccine mandate has forced so many senior crew members from the ferry system, and they don't have enough licensed crew members to operate all the services within the timetable. So here's what I would do. I'd rescind the vaccine mandate, make an effort to rehire the state ferry employees who are forced out. I know the governor has rescinded that mandate and has put some effort forth in rehiring and recruitment, but I think there's much more to do to bring back employees who are forced out. Number two, approach recently retired ferry workers to see if they would be willing to return on a part-time basis to help with training and recruitment. Number three, direct the state ferry system to immediately begin design work on appropriately sized clean diesel ferries with the intention of securing state funding in 2025, and also those could be converted to electric ferries at some point if we deem that necessary. Number 4, appoint an expert panel to objectively assess the ferry electrification program. That effort is way over our budget and years behind schedule, but early next year we should where am I here? Early next year, we should have bids on the hybrid electric ferries and updated cost estimates for electrifying terminals. So before jumping in with both feet, we need to understand the true cost and benefits. For instance, I understand Seattle City Light is going to raise electricity rates by 30% or more in the years ahead. What would that do to the energy cost comparison with diesel? Number 5, ask the Washington State Transportation Commission to make a recommendation on putting the Anacortes to Sydney, BC run out to bid. The ferry system has said they won't be able to restore that service until 2030, and I think that's just too long. So let's see if the private sector is willing and able to provide that service to us. I understand the desire to minimize carbon emissions, but we need to balance that against the need to provide basic service to communities around Puget Sound. In the State Ferry Long Range Plan, there was a budget gap of nearly $7 billion, and we don't have a good feel on the projects that don't address immediate service needs. Another major project that is a candidate for reconsideration is replacement of the I-5 Columbia River Bridge. We do need to replace that bridge, which is 100 years old, as you all know. But costs for that project have doubled, and that was last year's estimate. When the supplemental budget came out, it finally published later this year. We'll see what the updated numbers look like. I am particularly interested in the cost and ridership of the proposed light rail extension as a part of this project. That adds more than $1 billion, and meeting with the people in that community, and I'm sure you have too, there's great concern about that additional $1 billion added cost that would only serve 2 stops in Clark County. So it doesn't really do much for Washington State residents for that kind of money. Ridership on C-Trans bus service and Portland's Max has been trending down for years, which makes me question whether the light rail extension makes economic or even environmental sense. I know our partners in Portland want light rail, but including it makes the bridge replacement project far more expensive, more complicated, and it will take longer for us to complete. I'd point out that the I-5 bridge isn't the only Columbia River crossing in need of attention. The Hood River Bridge is also about 100 years old and due for replacement, and the Lewis and Clark Bridge and Longview is getting at that stage also. So those are not going to be cheap either. The only way we are going to pay for these essential projects is to really tighten our belt. I know you are wondering how we're going to pay for all this, because that was part of your discussion prior to my beginning this presentation. I'm wondering too, I wish I could tell you exactly how much it might cost, but because we don't have updated costs and we don't know the outcome of the ballot initiatives that would be having an impact on state revenues, I can't give you a detailed plan yet. I don't think anyone can at this point. Instead, let me outline some steps that I take to answer that question. So first, we need to take a hard look at the state transportation budget. As I mentioned, there isn't going to be enough revenue to pay for everything, so we're going to have to set some priorities. That means some non-essential programs that received funding in recent budgets may not be high enough priority in 2025. For example, I don't think we can justify further expenditure on the proposed ultra-high-speed rail project in the I-5 corridor. It would cost close to $100 billion that we don't have and take more than 20 years to build, and it still wouldn't fix I-5. The California high-speed rail project has turned into a very costly boondoggle, and we need to focus again, I think, on priorities. Number 2, pay for the culvert replacement and improved fish passage projects with general fund revenue. Number 3, shift revenue from the sales tax on cars to the motor vehicle fund. Right now, all the sales tax goes to the general fund, which has had a surplus. Meanwhile, DOT funding isn't adequate to maintain the highways those cars travel on. To reduce the impact of the general fund, the shift could be phased in over several biennia. Number four, continue to use tolling to help fund new highways and construction. No one likes paying the tolls, but the reality is the major highway projects are expensive and there just isn't going to be enough gas tax revenue, as you earlier discussed, to fund all the work that needs to be done. Where tolls are imposed, they should reflect the value a project creates users and vary by time of day to optimize traffic flow. In all cases, revenue collected should be used exclusively for highway purposes, consistent with the 18th Amendment that was mentioned in some of your survey responses. Number five, examine how electric vehicles can pay their fair share of the highway maintenance costs. Six, convert the I-5 HOV lanes to high occupancy toll lanes. When those lanes are underutilized, they can generate revenue by allowing single occupant cars to use the lanes in return for paying a toll. This is already being done on 167, as you know, and 405. Obviously, any major transportation funding package will need to be developed in partnership with the legislative body and the transportation committees. I welcome that bipartisan cooperation, which is the way I think most of you know my history, is the way I've always worked in the sheriff's office and when I served in Congress. Traffic safety has recently been getting a lot of attention. And that's where my focus was for many years in the sheriff's office. No doubt you've seen the awful accident statistics. Target zero is farther away now than it was 10 years ago. As former King County Sheriff, I've had plenty of real life experience with traffic accidents. One of the things I learned is that accidents have many causes. Which means that there is no simple solution, obviously. I also learned that human behavior is responsible for most accidents, whether it's distracted driving, driving under the influence, or just plain reckless driving. To bring down accident rates, we need to do a better job of driver training, testing, and enforcement. Technology can help us with that, and I'm optimistic that things like collision avoidance and speed monitoring technology can help, but it won't be the entire solution. There is and will continue to be a need for more law enforcement officers on our highways and more incident response teams that can help clear disabled vehicles and warn drivers of problems ahead. We all know that we're very short of police officers in this state, so that is a long-term suggestion as we start to attract police officers back into our community again. We will also need the assistance of local jurisdiction prosecutors and judges. There's nothing more discouraging than seeing a repeat offender or someone driving 90 miles an hour get off with a slap on the wrist or driving away in a stolen car at 100 miles an hour and then later seeing them involved in a fatal accident. This isn't about writing tickets. The goal is changing behavior. Something I've seen recently that isn't helpful is agencies using the need for improved safety as justification for projects that do little or nothing to address the root causes of accidents. Safety is so important that we can't afford to throw out our limited funds at projects that won't do anything to really address the problem. For instance, transit projects that are the best peripheral to traffic safety. Again, let me thank you for this opportunity. I appreciate your advocacy for a safe, efficient, cost-effective transportation system. And I look forward to working with you. And again, as I said, all of the members of the House and Senate, when we become the governor, we'll have an opportunity to hopefully move things forward and address some of the priorities in our transportation world. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you, Dave, and thank you for those comments. A lot of the stuff that we talked about and questions that we did, during the survey, and line up a lot of the comments that you just prepared for us. And so we really appreciate your time, especially during the you're running for governor, right? Your time is very valuable,
It is a
and
little busy.
thank you for giving a few minutes to us today.
Hey, good luck, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.